This conference will now be recorded.
Hi, everyone. I've just set the conference to record so that we can share it with our local TV stations and chambers of commerce for anyone who wasn't able to join us. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to get started just a few minutes after 10:30 to give everyone time to log in. I see we have a few people joining us by phone. If you are one of the people who will be presenting today from DOA, can you let me know real quick?
Good. Good morning, Senator.
Good morning. That you, Secretary?
That is me. Right
Great.
here.
Good. And I see Jessica Meradian as well. Hi, Jess.
Hi, Senator.
All right. Great. So, Emily, should we go ahead and get started? Okay. Okay, Emily, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you're coming through loud and clear, Senator.
Okay. All right, super. All right, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our virtual town hall on unemployment benefits in Massachusetts. I'm State Senator Jason Lewis. I also want to recognize and thank the state representatives in our communities, many of whom are also participating on this call and have been actively helping our constituents and local businesses with unemployment issues. So Brad Jones, Rich Haggerty, Mike Day, Kate Lipper-Garabedian, Donald Wong, Steve Altrino, and Paul Donato. Thank you all very much for being great partners in all the work we do. And I also want to give a shout out and a big thank you to our local chambers of commerce who are also helping to sponsor this town hall today and who've been doing incredible work through this crisis in communicating with and supporting our local businesses, nonprofits, and residents. Access to unemployment insurance benefits is absolutely vital to help residents weather the storm of the COVID-19 pandemic and the economic fallout it has caused. Our state legislature and our partners in Congress have recognized this need and have taken unprecedented steps to strengthen and to expand access to unemployment benefits for as many people as possible. As you may or may not know, unemployment assistance is now available to many different types of workers who may have lost their hours or wages reduced or seen their income reduced as a result of this pandemic. And this includes folks who are self-employed, independent contractors, so-called gig economy workers, and others who would not normally qualify for unemployment benefits. So that's a really good thing. Our special guest for our town hall today is Rosalin Acosta, who serves as the Secretary of Labor and Workforce Development in Governor Baker's cabinet. Secretary Acosta's portfolio includes the Department of Unemployment Assistance, which we often refer to as DUA. The DUA has undoubtedly been one of the busiest agencies in all of state government these past few months. Between March 15th and May 2nd, DUA received nearly 780,000 applications for standard unemployment insurance, and another 185,000 claimants filed for benefits through the new Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program, which is for folks who would not ordinarily qualify for standard benefits. These numbers are absolutely unprecedented and of course reflect the enormous hardship that this crisis has caused for our businesses and for our workers. DUA has responded by increasing its staff from 50 employees prior to the pandemic that are available to process claims to over 2,000, which is absolutely incredible to have that done in such a short amount of time. They have held daily town halls in multiple languages to share information and to answer questions. And thanks to Secretary Acosta's leadership and the incredibly hard work of her team, Massachusetts was one of the first states, if not the first state, to start processing PUA claims. And they did so 10 days earlier than the estimated launch date for this new application portal. Prior to joining the Baker administration, Secretary Acosta had over 30 years of experience in the banking industry. She was named one of Boston's most influential women in 2014 and has served in many community and civic capacities. Born in Cuba, she earned her BA from Wesleyan University, where she played on the varsity ice hockey team. She has 5 children and is an avid traveler, runner, and cyclist. And I can say from personal experience, having served as the chair of the Labor and Workforce Development Committee last session, she is a wonderful person to work with, and we are very lucky to have her leading our labor department at any time, and particularly when we're going through a crisis like this. In a moment, I will hand it over to Secretary Acosta to share some opening remarks with us. Then the plan is for me to ask the Secretary and her team the questions that we received from you in advance. If you think of another question during the town hall that hasn't already been addressed, please send it directly to Emily Granoff from my team in the chat, and we will try to fit it in. And that's Emily Granoff, Granoff. And thank you, Emily, for your help today in organizing this town hall. If your question is very specific to your unique situation, then what we ask is that you please email my office at jason.lewis@masenate.gov, and we will work with you and the folks at DUA to resolve your issue. So we won't be able to answer or resolve specific claimant cases during this town hall, but absolutely follow up with my office and we will work with you and DUA to answer questions and get your specific situation resolved. Okay, Secretary Acosta, thank you so much for taking time from your very busy schedule to join us this morning. Over to you.
Thank you, Senator Lewis, and thank you everyone for joining us today. You know a little bit more about me than you probably wanted to know. So yes, we have been very busy at the Department of Unemployment. As Senator Lewis said, we have scaled up our workforce tremendously to meet the demands of today. And not only did we have to scale, but we also had to make sure that all our workers were safe. And in order to do that, we had to move from an on-premise, 100% on-premise operation to 100% remote operation. So I can tell you now that the majority of our secretariat is working off-premise right now and remotely, and it's working. So I am, like most employers, looking for best practices that come out of this journey that we're in, this unexpected journey that we're in, to see what we can continue to do in the future. And there are many good practices that have come out of this and really have forced us into the digital age where I think we all wanted to be to begin with, but not like this. I will also say that if we do not get to all your questions today, we do have our call center that is open, and I will give you the number. It is 877-626-6800, and you can call that number for both traditional unemployment questions as well as PUA unemployment questions. In addition to that, we, as Senator Lewis mentioned, we are having daily town halls. We have been having virtual town halls every single day since March 22nd. Only day we skipped was Easter Sunday. But other than that, we have had virtual town halls every day attended by over 230,000 people in the Commonwealth, many of which are repeat listeners, and it now sounds like more of a talk show than anything else. But it's been wonderful to be able to answer people's questions and literally solve claimant issues on the spot. We have a wonderful customer service manager by the name of Hal Bent. There was a great story in the Boston Globe about him about 2 weeks ago, and really loved to see how that empathy was portrayed, empathy that he gives every single caller in that front page. I can't tell you how proud I've been of our team. They have been incredibly dedicated. We have not taken any days off since this pandemic began, because as many claims as we have put through, we know that there are others that have not gotten through, and we will not rest until every single claim gets successfully processed and all questions are answered. So we have we are working through a significant backlog in our calls, and we're doing that through the surge of staff that we currently have. Senator Lewis mentioned a few of the new benefits available to unemployment claimants. And I just want to go over them very quickly. And it's all part of the federal law called the CARES Act. And the CARES Act basically for unemployment benefits can be divided into 3 different parts. And the first part is the federal pandemic unemployment compensation. And that's the part of the CARES Act that grants $600 per week to any eligible UI claimant or any eligible PUC, which is the Pandemic Emergency Unemployment Claims, or the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance, and I'll explain both of those in a second. But if you're eligible for any of those types of unemployment, you are eligible for the $600 in addition to your eligible amount per week. Now that program started on March 29th, and there's a little bit of a confusion on that. Some folks think that that it was a week ending, but it's the week beginning March 29 to April 4th. And that would be the first week that anyone is eligible for the $600 per week. And that program ends at the end of July 31st, 2020. So if you're currently eligible for unemployment, you would be currently eligible for the $600 per week. In addition, as Senator Lewis mentioned, the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program, that program is for independent contractors, gig workers, folks that are earn income through 1099 that otherwise would be eligible for traditional unemployment. Those folks now are eligible for unemployment assistance. They too will receive the $600 per week. And it's a different application process than the traditional unemployment. If you believe you're eligible for unemployment, the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance, you would go to mass.gov/P as in pandemic, PUA. And so you would apply there if you're an independent contractor or a gig worker and you've been laid off for a COVID-19 related reason, then you would be eligible for the PUA, and we can talk more about that as we move on in this town hall. And then the third part of the CARES Act is called the Pandemic Emergency Unemployment Compensation, or the PEUC, and that benefit allows you to collect an additional 13 weeks of benefits if you've exhausted your benefits. And again, that program starts on March 29th, not available before that, but March 29th, and ends at the end of the year, December 27, 2020. And you would also be eligible for the $600 per week under the PEUC extended benefit. So that is a quick overview of the CARES Act, and I'm sure that we'll have other potential questions on that. But I'm pleased to be here today, and I'm also joined by two wonderful team members, Mike Doheny, which is our Undersecretary of Labor and our General Counsel, as well as Jessica Moradian, our Legislative Director and Deputy Chief of Staff. And if the questions get really hard, I will turn to one of them because they're the smartest people in the room, and they will answer your questions. So with that, Senator, I'll turn it back to you.
All right. Well, thank you, Secretary, and thank you to your terrific team, for folks on this call and on the town hall, and all of those who've been working, as you said, so hard with not even a day off since this all began. I just wanted to let folks know that Emily's going to post in the chat a link to a one-page unemployment insurance guide that my office put together that also has links, includes links to all of the different resources in terms of getting questions answered and actually applying for the different types of unemployment insurance. And we've also had that translated into various different languages. So again, to share with those in our communities who may not speak English as their first language. Okay, we've got great questions that have been submitted. They fall into a couple categories. First category is sort of eligibility related questions. Then we have some around PUA. Then we have some questions from the perspective of employers, particularly small employers. And then maybe there's a few sort of process type issues that we've seen come up from our constituents that we'll just mention if we have time. All right, so in terms of eligibility, we had a question submitted from Lisa Bergeron and similar question from Paul Ulstrand. And they asked specifically about college students. Are they eligible for unemployment benefits and under what circumstances? Lisa's son is supposed to be starting work next week. And at this point, his employer isn't even responding. Now, in terms of answering this question, Secretary Acosta, I would frame it, I think, as part of a larger question about eligibility for college students, for seasonal workers, and others who may not technically have lost their job, but they are facing the loss of anticipated earnings in the months ahead. So they would have had summer work or summer gigs that they were counting on, which may now not be happening. So the question is, how are they treated? Do they qualify for any benefits? And if you could kind of speak to that.
Thank you, Senator, for that question. And so, Lisa, in terms of your college student, if your college student had a start date and an employer that had already hired him, but now is not responding, then he would be eligible for PUA, because it would be obviously employer. He has an employer, but he has a start date, and the employer is not responding, probably because of COVID-19. So they would be eligible. Your other question brings more nuance into the answer, because it depends on the type of wages that the photographer or the freelancer might be getting. If they have any kind of W-2 income, and the magic number to remember on this is $5,100. So if in the year 2019 someone earned more than $5,100 in W-2 income, then we would ask them to apply under the traditional UI unemployment system. If they did not earn more than $5,100, then they would be eligible for the PUA benefit. This has become pretty confusing for a lot of folks because people have both. They have both 1099 and they have traditional. And unfortunately, even if the majority of your income is 1099 income, not W-2 income, the federal regulations around this. And remember, this is a federal program. We are, as a state, administering this program for the feds. So it is their money, their rules, and that's what we abide by. So if you make more than $5,100 in W-2 income, in all circumstances, you're going to go to the traditional side, and the traditional UI unemployment.
Okay, great. So Lisa, if you run the town hall, of course, the bad news is your son may not be able to go forward with his summer employment that he was counting on, but at least consolation is it sounds like he would be eligible to receive unemployment benefits. So that's at least that's something for Lisa and her family. Follow-on questions is sort of related. Is for people who may not have an adequate work history that would normally be required to be eligible for regular unemployment benefits. Maybe they weren't working in 2019 for whatever reason. They're a newly arrived immigrant beginning of this year, various different situations. What, if any, UI benefits do they qualify for? So this is someone who doesn't have enough of a work history, but was working when the pandemic hit and has been hurt by the pandemic, have lost their job or been furloughed or something like that.
So if there's not enough wages for traditional UI, then they would be eligible for the pandemic unemployment assistance. And you mentioned immigrants, so I just want to be clear there. In order to apply for this benefit, you would have to have some kind of work visa, some kind, and give us your US CIS number in order to be able to apply for the pandemic unemployment assistance. Okay,
thank you. A question we got about teenagers. If someone's under the age of 18, but let's say they have been working since they were 15 years old, part-time job, and they've seen their hours reduced or their wages or lost their job, what happens to the case of a teenager in that situation, someone under 18?
So until yesterday, it would have been very clear, and I would have said to you, not eligible. But we got some guidance yesterday from the Department of Labor that under the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program, a teenager would be eligible if they are not working due to a COVID-related issue. So if there's a COVID-19 related issue that forced them out of the workplace or preventing them to go back into the workplace, they would be eligible for the pandemic unemployment assistance and the federal pandemic unemployment compensation, which is that $600. Wow. So in most cases, these teenagers could make some real money. They would be eligible for the minimum weekly benefit, which is about $270 plus the $600 a week.
Wow, that is great news.
Better job than I ever had as a teenager.
That's right. Our teenagers are in the money. All right. Well, you heard it first here, hot off the presses. So Good news for our teens who may also now be eligible for the pandemic unemployment assistance. And as Secretary Acosta said, there's a minimum amount per week. And then in addition to that, as she described, you would also be eligible for that additional $600, which would run through, that program runs through the end of July. Okay, one final eligibility question from Robert Whalen. He was in his question relates to somebody who was unemployed and was receiving unemployment benefits prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. So they were unemployed, looking for a job. Pandemic hits. Of course, now it's even harder to find a job. It's obviously even difficult to look for work. So his question is, does a person in this situation automatically qualify for those additional 13 weeks? I know that's referred to as pandemic emergency unemployment compensation. Do they, and for that matter, anybody who exhausts their regular benefits, do they qualify for the additional 13 weeks automatically, or is there an additional application that they have to submit? Just what would that process look like?
Great question. So for anyone that has exhausted benefits, right now, until the system for the exhaustion of the benefits, it needs to go through the traditional UI unemployment portal. Right now, we're building that, and it's going to be available very, very soon. For anyone that has exhausted their benefits right now, yesterday, last week, 2 weeks ago, you should go to the mass.gov/PUA. You apply actually under the PUA portal for the extension. Within the coming days, we are going to migrate that back to the traditional UI portal, which is where it belongs. So once you're in UI, if you exhaust your benefits, you don't need to do anything. It will automatically tag on the additional 13 weeks if you're an existing claimant. If you're a brand new claimant from the past, then you'd have to just reopen that claim under the UI system, and then automatically you would get the 13 weeks. So that's going to be available under the regular UI system within the next few days. But right now, if you have exhausted, I would suggest you go to the mass.gov/PUA website and apply for your extensions there.
Great. All right. Thank you, Secretary Acosta. That was very clear and hopefully helpful to our constituent. All right. So moving on now to some questions related to the PUA program, Pandemic Unemployment Assistance. And again, this is a brand new program. We've never had something like this before, so very much appreciate Congress's action here. And this is for gig workers, independent contractors, folks who are self-employed. So one of the things that has come up, as you probably well know, is that some gig workers and independent contractors earn income across multiple states. So they may live in Massachusetts and earn some income or most of their income here, but they might also earn some in New Hampshire, Rhode Island. And our understanding is that they are not eligible for PUA because of a question when in the application process whether they've earned any wages outside of Massachusetts. So the question for these folks is, I guess, are they completely out of luck, or is there some option for them to still qualify for some PUA benefits?
Yeah, and I think there's a misunderstanding in that question because the question says, did you work in Massachusetts? So if you worked in multiple states, the only criteria is that we encourage people to apply in the state that they live. But if you have income from another state, you can only apply in one state. So you would apply in Massachusetts, and we would then ask for the income if it's Rhode Island or Connecticut, et cetera. But if you desire to file in Rhode Island, you can do that also. But you can only apply in one state, not in multiple states. And we do, by the way, share data with other states. So we would know if you've applied in more than one state, and you would be denied your benefit if you're claiming in more than one state. Only one state will process that claim.
Great. Oh, that's so good news. I'm really glad we cleared that up because I think there's a misunderstanding there. So just to be clear for everyone, you can file a claim, and let's say you pick Massachusetts, and then would you be able to count towards your claim income you've earned not just in Massachusetts, but in other states as well?
Correct.
You would. Good. Okay. All right. Good to know. One other question around the PUA we received is, I guess with traditional unemployment benefits, you can have, taxes withheld because those benefits are taxable from, can have them withheld from your weekly benefit. If you are collecting PUA, does it work the same way? Because the questioner, I guess, is hearing that this option may not be available when someone files for PUA in order to have, their taxes withheld.
So we, in an effort to expeditiously put up this PUA program, there were some things that we had to leave out in order to get it working quickly, and that was one of them. So right now, you do not have the option. It is taxable income, but you do not have the option to withhold tax from your PUA benefits like you do in the DUA side and the traditional side. We may add that functionality by the end of the year, but right now we wanted to get that up quickly, so it is not. So I do suggest that if you are receiving PUA, that you withhold a portion of that for taxes, because we will send you the proper tax form by the end of the year for you to claim this income, and it will be taxable to you. So again, we might add that functionality towards at some point this year, but right now only child support comes out of PUA, and in the traditional unemployment, child support and taxes. If you opt for taxes to come out in the traditional side, you can do that, but in the PUA side right now you cannot do that, but child support will come out of PUA.
Great. Okay, thanks for that clear explanation. And just a reminder to everyone that PUA, again, is a brand new program. The Department of Unemployment Assistance had to basically stand up a new software portal in order to process these applications, and they did this in an incredibly short amount of time. In fact, beat their own estimated deadline by 10 days. So that was all in the interest of getting benefits to people as soon as possible. So that's why there may not be exactly the same functionality that there is when with the regular UI system. Okay, so moving on, we've got a couple questions sort of from the employer perspective. And the first one, I'm really glad someone asked this, because I have to admit, I had heard of this program, but I also wasn't all that familiar with it. And I think it's good for employers and employees to know more about it. So it is the work share program. So Secretary Acosta, maybe you can start by explaining a little bit about what the work share program is and how it functions. And then the specific question we received from Rosalyn Fisher, who's with Melrose Wakefield Hospital, one of our local hospitals, and we thank all of our local hospitals and health centers for doing an incredible job through this pandemic. We are deeply indebted to them and all of their staff. The scenario she poses is if an employee's pay has been reduced by 50%, and so let's say their pay before was $3,000 a week. Now they've been reduced to half of that, $1,500 a week. Would they, if the employer is participating in the work share program, would that person be able to collect the other half of their pay that they're not receiving from their employer in UI benefits? In this case, that would amount to $1,500 a week. Or is there a cap on the amount that a person could receive in terms of the UI benefit for as part of the work share program? So again, maybe start out with maybe an overview of what the program is for folks who don't know, and then maybe you could speak to the specifics of this question related to how much someone can receive in terms of a weekly benefit.
Certainly, and I will start off by giving you that work share overview, and then so you can hear Mike Dohany's voice, I'm going to ask him to take the second part, because he is here. I don't want him to get bored. So the work share program is a great program. It's a layoff aversion program, and it's an alternative for employers that are facing a cut in the workforce. So instead of laying off a valued employee, you can actually furlough them or talk to us about the workshare program. And it allows employees to receive part of their uninsurance benefits while working reduced hours. And it helps employers avoid, the burden of a layoff situation, because when the economy begins to open again and productivity begins to increase again, you don't want to lay off some of your most valued workers, folks that you've spent time training, that know your systems, and you want to avoid that kind of disruption in your business. So in order to maintain that work productivity, the Workshare program, I think, is, frankly, one of my favorites. We have worked with now over 200 companies since last month on this workforce layoff aversion program. And you can get more information on this Workshare program on mass.gov/workshare. We have contact information in there, and all of the benefits of Workshare and how it works. So for Rosalyn Fisher's particular question, Mike Doheny, I'm gonna ask your voice to come in and share what our formula is for the Workshare benefits.
Thanks, Secretary. So you're going to make me talk about earnings disregard.
Yes, my favorite topic.
So it is a slightly complicated formula, but the short answer to Rosalyn Fisher's question is no, that it's not income replacement dollar for dollar, no matter what the person is earning from Workshare. So the way it works is that they can, so they are eligible for a benefit that the maximum amount of their benefit is the same max benefit amount that regular UI claimants have, which currently is $823 a week. They can earn from their continued earnings from their employer. They can earn up to 1/3 of that benefit amount. But once they go above that 1/3 in their regular earnings, their UI benefit for Workshare gets reduced dollar for dollar for every dollar over the 1/3. So it's a little bit complicated, but the short answer is no, she cannot get full, she likely at that salary amount cannot get full wage replacement through Workshare and continue, so cannot get a full wage replacement through the benefit and continue to earn half her money through Workshare. She will get some benefit amount, but some of the earnings will be disregarded.
Okay, got it. All right. Well, thank you.
Clear as mud, right?
No, I think that is pretty clear.
That's why I had our Undersecretary answer that question, because I always get tongue twisted when I do.
This stuff is complicated, and there's just no way around that. But that's why this type of a forum, to have these conversations. And of course, there's very good information on the DUA's website. So again, encourage folks to look at that. There's very helpful FAQs on DUA's website. Again, in the chat, Emily has posted a guide that my office put together, which has links to where the right information is on different types of unemployment insurance and how to apply. So again, encourage folks to look at that. And again, to look more closely if you're an employer at the Workshare program, because even if it isn't dollar for dollar income replacement, it can still go a long way to helping you manage through this crisis. Okay, let's move on. We've got a situation now that's starting to arise more and more, where employers are looking to bring people back. They've been furloughed, perhaps laid off, or their hours have been reduced, but now, which is good news, employers are either already reopening or anticipating that they will be able to start restoring some or all of their operations. And so there are questions arising around what are the responsibilities of workers to return if they are collecting unemployment benefits. They may be concerned about their health in terms of returning to work. Right now, we don't have all of the guidelines in place, in terms of public health guidelines in all different kinds of workplaces. We know that's coming, but we don't necessarily have it all in place yet. So I know that a new tool was, I guess, recently implemented on DUA's website for employers to report if an employee has been, asked to come back to work and if he or she is refusing to return to work. But I think folks are looking for more details on what that process is supposed to look like, what the repercussions would be if a worker does not want to come back to work and would rather continue to collect unemployment benefits. So there's a range of different sort of nuances to this, but I think if you could speak to this in general, that would be helpful for both employers and for workers.
Yes, Senator, and this is a question that we hear from employers an awful lot, especially because of some of the benefit parameters that the CARES Act is now benefiting folks, particularly around the additional weekly monetary amount. We have for employers, we do have a fraud email box that we actually have had in the past. It's not a new way of communicating with us. And right now we have modified our work search requirements to allow workers to satisfy this requirement by staying in contact with their employers. But if the employer is saying come back to work, and you don't have a COVID-19 related reason not to come back to work, then we would want to know about that, and we would want the employer to communicate with us. So just a few things. The employer should report the date that the offer of work was made, the date the employee would have returned to work, and a description of how the offer was directly communicated to that employee. An employer should also report the following details about the work offered. Was it a full-time job? Was it a part-time job? We need some of the details around the exact offer of work, the rate of pay, the type of work performed, and the reason for an employee's refusal to come back to work if they gave you one. Is the employee being recalled to the same type of work previously performed? If not, describe what the formal working conditions are and the method that the job offer was communicated to the employee. So all of those submissions will be reviewed by us, by our investigators, and if appropriate, the claimant's benefits will be stopped. So once that is given to us, then an investigation begins, and that employee, if they have been paid benefits, they will owe the Department of Unemployment Assistance those benefits back if we deemed that staying out of work was not an eligible reason to do so.
Okay, thank you. So obviously we're in an unprecedented situation here, and I can anticipate there will be certain kinds of workplaces where there might be some employees, maybe because they have underlying health concerns or whatever, that feel that even if the employer is saying it's safe to come back to work, they are implementing social distancing, hygiene, but the employee may say, well, I don't believe that it is safe enough, so I don't feel like I can come back to work. I know this is nuanced and may have to be reviewed on a case-by-case basis, but do you want to share any thoughts about sort of how to think about that? Because I anticipate, unfortunately, we're probably going to run into a lot of situations like that going forward.
Yeah, we will run into those situations. And let's remember that everything you say to us in an unemployment claim, you're certifying that under pains of penalty and perjury that what you're saying to us is true. So if you're saying to us that you cannot come to work because of a COVID-19 related reason, which our emergency regulations allow, then that's something that we would review and to make sure there's a reasonable cause for not going back to work. If at some point it's discovered that it was a fraudulent claim, then obviously there would be consequences and penalties to the claimant because you have certified that all your statements are true. So in this COVID-19 place that we find ourselves, Senator. There is some nuance, but our process would definitely allows for someone that has a COVID-related 19 reason to be eligible for unemployment.
Okay, and thank you. And if somebody is sort of unsure how to proceed, I guess whether they're an employer or a worker going forward, what would you advise? I know you've got information, I know you've put up on your website that has some helpful answers, but if they have further questions, what would you suggest they do?
So I would suggest that people go online first, because we have a rich amount of information that we update literally every single day, sometimes multiple times a day, as we get questions that perhaps were not in our FAQs. So we have a pretty robust FAQ online for employees as well as employers. If for whatever reason we missed your question, which it's getting longer and longer, if for whatever reason we missed your question, then you would feel free to call us at our 877-626-6800 number.
Great. Okay, and I know Emily Granoff just posted also the link to that information on DUA's website. Okay, very good. That's very helpful, I think, for folks understanding kind of the nuances of this, as we expect more businesses will be reopening with, and calling their employees back to work. We have a question that has come in through the chat, which is essentially, if someone doesn't have access to a paid sick leave, the new federal program that offers it in certain cases doesn't apply, or their employer doesn't have paid sick leave, or for that matter, maybe they've exhausted the amount of paid sick leave that is offered by their employer, and they still need to stay home. They're either quarantining, they are taking care of a family member, perhaps who is ill or quarantined, and it's directly related to COVID-19. The question is, in that case, does someone like that qualify for UI benefits? It may just be a week or a couple of weeks, that they, again, are not getting paid sick time and are out of work before they can go back. So it would just help them for that, week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, perhaps.
I'm actually going to pass that one to our Undersecretary Dahani to answer.
The answer there, Senator, is yes, they would be eligible either for regular unemployment if they're a W-2 regular type wage earner. They would be eligible for regular unemployment under our emergency regulations, or if they're a gig worker, 1099, self-employed, any of those other categories, not sufficient earnings in the past year, they're new to the workforce, any of those other categories, the situation you described is absolutely one of the covered COVID-19 reasons under PUA as well. So that person who either is diagnosed, is symptomatic, is caring for someone who's diagnosed, those are all conditions covered under both the emergency regs and the PUA guidance.
Great. Okay, thank you, Mike. And that's good news for folks to know that is another safety net for you if you fall into the situation. And I should also add that that I have filed emergency legislation along with Representative Paul Donato that would create an additional benefit of paid sick time up to 10 days for folks who find themselves in the situation where they may either they're ill, they have to quarantine or self-isolate, or care for a family member where they don't have an alternative access to paid sick time. So that legislation's been filed. It's actually pending on Beacon Hill right now. So we'll see, we're hopeful. We'll see what happens with that. But good news, as you've just heard in this town hall, if you fall into this situation where you don't have paid sick leave or you've exhausted your paid sick leave, you may well qualify for either traditional unemployment or PUA for that period of time that you need to be out of work. Okay, let's see, that's pretty much covers our questions. there were a few issues we've seen come up over the last couple number of weeks working with constituents that just wanted to maybe mention, and if you have any thoughts about them, just share them with us, or it can just be just sort of feedback. We have seen some cases where constituents have started receiving the $600 in additional federal weekly benefit, and then for some reason that they seem to stop receiving that, and then you sort of have to follow up to get it restarted again. Just don't know if that's a glitch in the system or if there's some reason why that would happen. Do you have any sort of knowledge of that? I don't know if that's common or not.
Yes, I don't know. I'm happy to answer that question because we've gotten it several times, and there seems to be a lot of confusion, number one, as to when the start date of this is. So if you've been eligible for unemployment all through all through the month of February, all through the month of January, most of March, some people are applying, or when they think that they're eligible for that $600 before that. Remember, the start date of the $600 was March 29th. The first week that you would be eligible for that $600 payment is March 29th to April 4th. That was the very, very first week. So everyone that is owed their $600 should absolutely be receiving it now and have received it, and should be completely current. So there is no glitch in the system. There's nothing that's going on in the office that precludes you from receiving the $600. But I will remind people that you must certify weekly. That is one area where people seem to say, gee, my benefits stopped. You have to certify every week, otherwise we don't know that you're still unemployed. Because once you go back to work and you stop certifying, we stop paying you. So if you stop certifying, we assume you're back at work. And we're not chasing you. You have to certify, you have to come into the system, certify, yes, I'm still unemployed. Yes, I'm still in touch with my employer, but I'm not working still related to COVID-19. So I need to certify for last week. So that's what we're seeing. We're either seeing folks that have misunderstood the system or that they have not certified their weeks. And that's usually the answer to that question, but there is no system problem.
Great. Okay, that's very helpful, and I think makes that clear. Lastly, every person's situation is different, and sometimes it is complicated, and does require, because there's follow-up, or maybe they may have accidentally misentered some information when they originally applied, and so there needs to be some direct dialogue with a staff person from DUA. What's your advice, in terms of having those follow-ups? I know some people, obviously it's better now because you've been able to ramp up your hiring so quickly, but what would be your advice for somebody who's trying to still resolve a claim, in order to make sure that it gets resolved as quickly as possible, so obviously they can start receiving their benefits?
Yes, and as I said at the very beginning, we were working through a pretty significant backlog over the last few weeks. From having 50 people to now having well over 1,300 people in our customer service center alone answering these calls. So the best way is to call us, the number that I'm sure Emily can put on the screen. We also have folks that have filled out contact forms. And we're calling those folks. We're about, I think, 2 weeks now, and we're trying to close that gap for the customer service side on the contact forms. And then the third way is our town halls. We're taking many calls every single day on those town halls, and they're about an hour and a half long, depending on how many questions we get live. So we get online questions and live questions. And for folks that go into the town hall and they do not get their questions answered, we actually follow up with them over the next day or two to make sure that we've captured their questions. So those are 3 different ways that I would suggest to get a hold of us. But again, we are working 7 days a week. We're calling people back until 8 p.m. every single night, Saturday and Sunday, and throughout the week. And one of the things that we find that about 30% of the people that we call are not picking up our phone call. So then that delays, obviously, the resolution of their claim. And the phone number that they will see coming from us is similar in the last 7 digits, but it starts with 617 instead of 877. So it's 617-626-6800. That's the phone number that you'll see coming from us, the identifier on your phone. And if you get that call, please pick up, because that's the Department of Unemployment Assistance trying to reach you to answer your questions.
Excellent. All right, and I believe that phone number is also in the chat as well. Secretary Acosta, I can't resist in the time we have left, just a few minutes. As you know, back in 2018, myself working with then Representative Paul Broder and working with you and Jessica Moradian and your team and many others were very excited to put in place and sign into law a new paid family and medical leave program in Massachusetts, and that's going to be a very welcome benefit for many of our families going forward. That benefit will start to be available January 1st of next year. So I just thought I'd give you a chance just to share a few words about how things are going with the new paid family and medical leave department that you've also had to stand up, and just to give people a sense of what's coming. Unfortunately, it's not available now during the pandemic, but it will be available starting next year.
You're making me shift from one brain side to the other. No problem. So another type of benefit, yes. So we benefits will be available on January 1st, and we're very excited about that. So we, as you know, we already started collecting contributions from employers, and so that's been going very well. And our teams are busily working on standing up a portal that is interactive, easy to use. We'll start our communication process shortly with employers and employees, so that they know how to file a successful claim. And it's all going right now. It's in process, all working and on time. So by January 1st, well before January 1st, you'll be hearing a lot more about paid family medical leave. And so we look forward to executing that benefit for the Commonwealth.
Excellent. We are very excited. Once this program is up and running, Massachusetts will really be a leader in the nation in terms of providing family leave for somebody, a birth of a child or adoption of a child, or a medical condition that it makes someone unable to work. So it really is going to help a lot of employees and employers as well, having that benefit available. So again, we're so grateful to you and your team, because you've had to build a whole new program from scratch. Fortunately, you have a little bit more time to stand it up than you did.
Not that much.
Not that much, but a little bit more. So we really appreciate your time and your expertise of yourself and Mike and Jessica on this call. We really appreciate all the work you're doing together with me and all my colleagues as we contact you on behalf of our constituents. You've been incredibly responsive, working with us and our constituents to get everybody's claims processed so they can start receiving what, in many cases is a life-saving unemployment benefit. So thank you again. Thank you to everybody who has joined us and for your good questions. Any follow-up, please feel free to reach out directly to DUA or to my office or to any of our state representatives. We are all available to assist employers and employees with any issues related to unemployment benefits or any other issues as we work together as best we can to navigate through this crisis. So again, thank you very much, everyone, and especially thank you to Secretary Acosta.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.